At 5:47 on the morning of May 11th, 1945, Private First Class Jack Harlow woke to steel cutting his skull. Japanese saber, 6 inches from death. The blade carved a shallow groove across his scalp before his hands could process what his eyes were seeing. Jack's rifle came up. M1 Garand, 9.5 pounds, lying across his chest where he'd fallen asleep 2 minutes earlier. The stock swung like a club, connected with the attacker's jaw. Bone cracked. The man dropped. Second attacker, 8 feet to the left, charging, bayonet extended, moving fast through the pre-dawn darkness. Jack's hands moved before his mind caught up. The Garand rose. No time for sights, no time for breathing technique, just eyes tracking movement the way his father taught him 15 years ago in Georgia pine forests when turkeys appeared and vanished in seconds. The rifle spoke. Crack. The Japanese soldier's chest exploded red. Body spun sideways, fell into ferns. First kill. 5:48 a.m. 100 more coming. Jack scrambled to his feet, blood in his eyes, his own blood from the saber strike. He wiped it away with his sleeve. Saw the situation developing 30 yards ahead. 10 Japanese soldiers rushing the machine gun position. The M19A4 Browning that had been their strongest defensive asset. The gun that Private Robert Chen and Private Michael Kowalski had been manning through the night watch. The position Jack had promised to take over at 5:30, but had fallen asleep instead. The 3 men Jack made a promise to. Last night, under stars. Simple words that now meant everything. You'll make it home. I swear it. 10 enemy soldiers reached the gun emplacement, grabbed the weapon, started rotating it 180 degrees. If that gun turned to fire into American positions, if those Japanese soldiers controlled the heaviest automatic weapon on this section of perimeter, Bobby and Mike would die. The 40 men behind them would die. The entire defensive line would collapse. Jack ran. 15 yards, blood still streaming down his face, boots pounding earth, rifle gripped in both hands. He jumped into the emplacement, 6 feet wide, 4 feet deep, sandbags and palm logs. 10 enemy soldiers clustered around the machine gun, all focused on the weapon, none watching their backs. Distance to nearest soldier. 3 feet. Jack fired. Center mass. The man fell backward into the gun. Second soldier turning. Jack worked the Garand's action, fired again. The soldier dropped. Third soldier reaching for his rifle. Jack shot him before the hands closed on wood. 7 shots, 8 seconds, 7 bodies. The M1 Garand semi-automatic action allowed this. No bolt to work between shots. No manual cycling. Just squeeze, recoil, squeeze, recoil, squeeze. The way his father taught him to shoot moving squirrels in Screven County when missing meant going hungry during the Depression. 3 soldiers remained. Too close to shoot now. Jack reversed the rifle, swung the stock. Connected with the nearest man's skull. Heard the crack. Reversed the swing. Drove the butt into the second soldier's throat. Felt cartilage collapse. The third man lunged with a bayonet. Jack parried with the rifle barrel. Then drove the stock forward into the man's chest. Heard ribs break. All 3 fell. The machine gun, destroyed. The struggle had damaged the feed mechanism. Spent casings and blood covered the emplacement floor. Jack climbed out, moved back toward the tree line. 10 men dead in less than 2 minutes. But the main assault was just beginning. More Japanese soldiers were advancing through the jungle, breaking branches, shouting orders, the sounds of 80 to 100 men moving through undergrowth. The attack concentrated on this section of perimeter, the section where Bobby and Mike had been, where Jack was supposed to have been on watch, but had fallen asleep. Jack took cover behind a fallen dipterocarp tree 20 yards from the destroyed gun position. The trunk measured 4 feet in diameter, solid cover from rifle fire, not from grenades or mortars. He checked his rifle. The Garand held 8 rounds in its en-bloc clip. He'd fired 7 during the emplacement fight. 1 round chambered, he ejected the partial clip, inserted a fresh one. The clip made its distinctive metallic ping as it seated. 7 more clips in the pouches on his belt. 56 rounds total. Mathematics were not favorable. 80 to 100 enemy soldiers. 56 rounds. Even perfect accuracy wouldn't be enough. But mathematics didn't matter. Only one thing mattered. The promise he'd made 18 hours ago. The promise that started with Jimmy's arterial spray coating his palms and a man dying before he could finish a sentence. To understand why Jack Harlow was alone behind a fallen tree facing 100 enemy soldiers with 56 rounds of ammunition, you need to go back. Not to his childhood in Georgia, not to basic training, but to yesterday morning, May 10th, 1945, 11:30 a.m., 19 hours before the Sabre strike. The patrol that changed everything. Company A sent a 4-man reconnaissance patrol, routine mission, safe area according to intelligence. 600 yards north of the perimeter. Check for enemy movement. Report back. Corporal James Reeves led, 22 years old, coal miner from Matewan, West Virginia before the war. Married, wife Sarah back home with their daughter, Margaret, 6 weeks old. Born April 3rd, Jimmy carried the photo in his helmet. Updated it 2 days ago when new mail arrived. Sarah holding the baby, both smiling. Private Robert Chen walks second position, 20 years old, railroad worker's son from Sacramento. His father had worked Southern Pacific Line with Jack's father back in 1928. That connection meant something out here. Shared history, shared blood almost. Private Michael Kowalski took third position, 19 years old, factory worker from Detroit, youngest of 6 brothers, only one who enlisted, wrote letters home every week. His mother's birthday was June 3rd, 23 days away. Mike had circled it on his pocket calendar, counted down every morning. Private Jack Harlow covered the rear, 24 years old, hunter from Scriven County, Georgia. No wife, no siblings. Father dead 3 years. Mother dead since 1927. Enlisted January 1942, 3 weeks after Pearl Harbor. Not because of patriotism, because he was alone and thought the Army might be different. It wasn't. 4 men moving through Philippine jungle, temperature 84 degrees, humidity suffocating, the smell of rot and flowers and wet earth, birds calling, insects buzzing, the sounds of a jungle that didn't care about the war happening inside it. 11:47 a.m., Jimmy stopped. Hand signal, movement ahead, 40 yards, small clearing visible through the trees. Japanese soldier crossing the clearing. Alone. Probably a scout. Standard doctrine said don't engage. Observe and report. Don't compromise the patrol. Jimmy raised his M1 Garand, sighted on the enemy soldier, then lowered it. Followed doctrine. Started to signal the patrol to pull back. His rifle jammed. Jack saw it happen from 60 yards back. Saw Jimmy slapping the rifle. The bolt stuck, trying to clear it. The Japanese soldier heard the noise. Turned, saw Jimmy, raised his Arisaka rifle. Jack was 60 yards away. His M1 Garand was zeroed for 300 yards. The target was moving. Trees blocked the shot. Formula for accurate shooting required 2 seconds. Acquire target, control breathing, squeeze trigger. Jimmy had 1 second to live. Jack didn't think. Fired on instinct. The way he shot turkeys in Georgia pine forest when they appeared for 3 seconds before vanishing. The way his father taught him when Jack was 9 years old and they were eating squirrel meat 4 nights a week because the depression had taken everything else. Don't think. Feel it. Your hands know. Jack fired, missed. The bullet hit a tree 2 feet left of the Japanese soldier. The enemy soldier fired. Jimmy's left leg exploded. Femoral artery. Blood sprayed 6 feet into the air. The kind of arterial spray that meant seconds, not minutes. Jack ran 60 yards, crashed through ferns. Bobby and Mike running from their positions, all 3 converging on Jimmy. Jack reached him first, dropped to his knees, pressed both hands on the wound. Blood pumped through his fingers, hot, pulsing, unstoppable. The femoral artery carried too much blood, too much pressure. Human hands couldn't seal it. Jimmy looked up, 22 years old, coal miner's son, new father, 23 days of war left before rotation home. My daughter. Words barely audible, blood loss stealing his voice. Margaret. Jack pressed harder, blood kept pumping, covered Jack's hands, soaked into the earth. You'll tell her I... Jimmy's eyes stayed open, but the light went out. Mid-sentence. No final words. No goodbye. Just gone. Jack knelt there, hands still pressed on the wound, blood everywhere, on his hands, his uniform, his face. Bobby was vomiting 10 feet away. Mike was crying. The Japanese scout was gone, vanished into the jungle. They carried Jimmy's body back, took turns, 400 yards through jungle in silence. No one spoke. What was there to say? The patrol had been routine, safe. Intelligence had promised. Intelligence was wrong. They reached the perimeter at 1:15 p.m., handed Jimmy's body to the medics, reported to the company commander, filed the after-action report, routine patrol, equipment failure, 1 KIA, numbers on a page, statistics for battalion headquarters. But Jimmy wasn't a number. He was a coal miner who sang off key, who showed that baby photo to everyone, who had 23 days left, who died because Jack missed a shot he should have made. Jack sat alone behind the supply tent at 3 o'clock that afternoon. Still had Jimmy's blood under his fingernails. Had tried to scrub it off. Couldn't. The mathematics were simple. If Jack could shoot 2 seconds faster, Jimmy would be alive. If Jack's M1 Garand could reload faster, he could have fired a second shot before the Japanese soldier fired. Could have corrected his miss. Could have saved Jimmy. The M1 Garand used an 8-round unblocked clip. When the last round fired, the clip ejected automatically. Reloading required removing a fresh clip from ammunition pouch, inserting it into the rifle's action, and seating it firmly. Standard reload time 4 seconds. In close combat, 4 seconds meant death. Jack had watched this math kill Jimmy. Watched the seconds tick by while he worked his rifle's action. While the Japanese soldier aimed, while Jimmy died. 4 seconds. The difference between a father coming home and a 6-week-old girl growing up without one. Jack made a decision that afternoon, sitting alone behind the supply tent with blood still under his nails. A decision that would either save hundreds of lives or end his own. No more Marines die because equipment is too slow. No more Margarets grow up without fathers. Didn't care about regulations. Didn't care about court-martial. Cared about mathematics. 4 seconds was too long. He would make it shorter. Modifying government weapons violated Article 108 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Maximum penalty, 5 years hard labor. In a combat zone, unauthorized weapon modification could be considered sabotage. Maximum penalty firing squad. Jack didn't care. Better a firing squad than watching another man die because the rifle was too slow. That evening, 600 p.m., Jack sat with Bobby and Mike on ammunition crates, watching the sunset, orange light filtering through jungle canopy, the three of them silent, processing what they'd seen. Bobby spoke first. My father worked Southern Pacific Railroad with your dad, 1928. He told me once Harlows keep their word. Jack didn't respond. Mike pulled out a letter, his mother's latest. She says she prays for me every night. I told her I'd be there for her birthday, June 3rd, 23 days. Jack looked at both of them. Two men who'd become brothers over 6 months of jungle and combat. Bobby with his quiet competence, Mike with his letters home. Both of them alive because Jimmy had walked point position today instead of them. Both of you are going home alive, Jack said. I promise. Bobby studied him. How do you know? Because I won't let what happened to Jimmy happen to you. Mike shook his head. We can't control that. You saw today. Equipment fails. People die. I can control it, Jack said. I will control it. The certainty in his voice made them both look at him differently. Something had changed in Jack behind that supply tent. Something that made promises mean more than regulations. At 10:30 p.m., while the company slept, Jack worked. He'd gathered materials during the afternoon. 2 belt clips salvaged from damaged webbing gear. Wire from ration box binding. Electrical tape from engineer supplies. Total cost $0. All salvaged materials that would have been thrown away. The modification was simple in concept, difficult in execution. Standard reload procedure required the soldier to reach to his ammunition pouch, extract a fresh clip, bring it to the rifle and insert it. 4 seconds. Most of that time wasted on the reach and extraction. Jack's father had taught him a principle for duck hunting. Pre-stage the next shell while shooting the current one. Keep your hand moving while your eyes stay on target. Jack applied that principle to the M1 Garand. He attached the belt clips to the rifle stock, positioned them where his left hand naturally rested while firing. The clips would hold a fresh on-block clip, ready to grab. New reload sequence, fire the last round. Clip automatically ejects. Left hand already holding the fresh clip because it was pre-staged on the rifle stock. Insert, seat, done. Total reload time 1.5 seconds, down from 4. The work took 3 hours. The wire cut his hands. Blood on the rifle stock. The electrical tape adhesive burned his skin where it touched. His eyes burned from working by flashlight, hands shaking from precision work with crude tools. Mike woke at midnight, saw Jack working, walked over quietly. "What are you doing, keeping my promise?" "That's a modification. They'll court-martial you." Jack didn't look up from his work. "Better than burying you." Mike watched for another minute, then went back to his position. Didn't report it, didn't try to stop it, because they'd both seen Jimmy die. Both understood what 4 seconds cost. Jack finished at 1:00 a.m., tested the modification. Dry fire practice, muscle memory training, grab insert seat. Did it 50 times, got the motion smooth, 1.5 seconds. Consistent, he just cut reload time by 62%, by breaking regulations, by risking court-martial, by deciding that keeping promises mattered more than following rules that got good men killed. Jack returned to his position at 1:30 a.m. Bobby was awake. Night watch, saw the modified rifle. "Your weapon looks different." "It is." Bobby studied the modification, understood immediately what it did. "You know what they'll do to you if they find out." "Don't care." Bobby was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out the photograph. His father standing in front of a Southern Pacific Railroad car. 1928, the year he'd worked with Jack's father. "My dad told me a story once about your father. They were moving a locomotive. Coupling failed. My dad was standing in the wrong place. Your father grabbed him, pulled him clear, saved his life." Bobby handed the photo to Jack. He said Harlows keep their promises. "I believe that." Jack handed the photo back. Said nothing, but something passed between them. Understanding. Trust. The kind of bond that forms when men face death together and decide that some things matter more than regulations. Mike joined them at 2:00 a.m. His watch rotation. Saw them looking at the modified rifle. "My mama's birthday is June 3rd. 23 days. I'm going to be there. I'm going to walk in that door and surprise her. She thinks I'm not coming home until July." He looked at Jack. "You really think we'll make it?" Jack met his eyes. "Yes, because I won't let you die the way Jimmy did." "That's a big promise. It's the only one that matters." They sat together in silence. 3 men in a jungle 8,000 miles from home. Bobby thinking about his father's railroad stories. Mike thinking about his mother's birthday. Jack thinking about the mathematics of keeping promises. At 11:30 p.m., intelligence reports came in. Japanese forces spotted 400 yards north. Estimated strength, 100-plus soldiers. Likely attack at dawn. The battalion was in retreat, cornered against the Sierra Madre Mountains. This was a desperation assault. Company commander called the squad leaders together. "We hold this position. If they break through here, the entire battalion is exposed. Every man stays at his position. No retreat." The defensive plan was simple. Interlocking fields of fire, machine guns at key positions, riflemen filling the gaps. Hold until reinforcements arrived from battalion. Jack, Bobby, and Mike were assigned to machine gun rotation with Corporal Daniel Williams. Williams was 23 from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Quiet, reliable. Served as the gun's ammunition bearer and assistant gunner. 4-hour shifts. Bobby and Mike took first watch with Williams 10:00 p.m. to 2:00 a.m. Jack would take second watch 2:00 a.m. to 6:00 a.m. At 11:50 p.m., Jack repositioned himself. Instead of sleeping in the designated rest area 40 yards back, he moved to within 3 paces of the machine gun position. Bobby and Mike were there. The gun was there. If Japanese attacked, that's where they'd hit first. That's where Jack needed to be, to keep his promise. Bobby noticed. "You're supposed to be resting back there." "I'll rest here." "That's not protocol." Jack looked at him. Jimmy followed protocol. Didn't save him. Bobby understood, said nothing more. At 5:30 a.m., Bobby and Mike's watch rotation ended. Jack was supposed to take over, but exhaustion had caught up with him. 3 hours of midnight modification work, zero sleep. His body gave out. "I'll take the watch in 2 minutes," Jack said. "Just need to close my eyes for 1 minute." He lay down, 3 paces from the machine gun, his modified M1 Garand across his chest. Thought he'd rest for 60 seconds. Fell asleep instead. At 5:47 a.m., the saber struck. Jack woke to steel cutting his skull, made his first 2 kills, saw the machine gun being overrun, saw Bobby and Mike pulling back, saw 80 more Japanese soldiers emerging from the jungle, realized his fatal error. He'd volunteered to be at that machine gun, to take the watch, to be the shield. But he'd fallen asleep. Now Bobby and Mike were exposed. The promise was in jeopardy. Everything he'd done, the modification, the 3 hours of bleeding hands, the risk of court-martial. And all of it meant nothing if he couldn't keep them alive for the next 36 minutes. Jack crouched behind the fallen tree, checked his modified rifle. The belt clips were secure, fresh on block clip pre-staged, ready to prove whether 1.5-second reloads could beat 4-second reloads, ready to prove whether a promise made over a friend's body could be kept against 100-to-1 odds. He looked back once, saw Bobby and Mike 60 yards behind, setting up a defensive position. Both alive, both looking at him. Jack turned forward, counted the enemy's soldiers advancing through the jungle. Too many to count. Didn't matter. He'd made a promise last night. "You'll make it home, both of you." In 36 minutes, he would keep that promise, or die trying. The jungle was never truly silent, but at 5:53 a.m., it held its breath. 6 minutes into the assault, Jack crouched behind the fallen dipterocarp tree, doing mathematics that would determine who lived and who died. 7 clips remained in his ammunition pouches, 56 rounds total. His modified rifle system gave him one advantage: reload time 1.5 seconds instead of 4. That advantage meant he could fire 40% more rounds in the same time window. Could maintain suppressive fire while enemy soldiers expected him to be vulnerable during reload. The mathematics were still unfavorable, 80 to 100 enemy soldiers against 1 rifleman. But mathematics didn't account for promises. Didn't account for Jimmy Reeves dying with his daughter's name on his lips. Didn't account for Bobby and Mike 60 yards behind him, depending on Jack to keep the promise he'd made over ammunition crates 18 hours ago. "You'll make it home. I swear it." Jack looked back once, saw Bobby dragging Williams toward the medic station. The ammunition bearer had taken shrapnel to his left shoulder during the initial assault. Not fatal, but enough to put him out of the fight, blood soaking through his uniform. Williams was conscious, trying to help Bobby move him, but his left arm hung useless. Saw Mike providing covering fire, rifle cracking in measured intervals, protecting Bobby while he moved the wounded man. Both men doing their jobs, both men alive. Williams would live if they could get him to the medics. Both men would stay that way if Jack could hold this position for 30 more minutes. If he failed, if the Japanese pushed through, they would flank the entire American position, would roll up the defensive line. Bobby and Mike would die first, then the 40 men behind them, then the 150 men in the adjacent positions, 190 American lives depending on one Georgian hunter with a modified rifle and a promise to keep. The first wave emerged from the jungle at 5:53 a.m., 15 Japanese soldiers in a loose skirmish line, moving cautiously, using available cover, stopping behind trees to observe before advancing. These were experienced soldiers. They'd assessed the situation after the machine gun assault failed, had adapted their tactics. Jack waited, let them close to 45 yards. His M1 Garand was slated for 300 yards, but Jack had spent 15 years shooting moving targets in Georgia forests. Squirrels that appeared and vanished, turkeys that gave you 3 seconds, deer that moved through pine shadows. His father's voice in his memory: "Your eyes know before your brain does. Trust your hands." The lead soldier stepped from behind a mahogany tree. 45 yards, moving toward cover, 3 seconds of exposure. Jack fired. The shot took the soldier's center mass. Body dropped. The crack of the Garand echoed through jungle. The remaining 14 soldiers went to ground instantly, began scanning for Jack's position. Jack had already shifted his aim. Second target, Japanese officer with binoculars, 50 yards out, standing exposed while trying to locate the source of fire. Jack squeezed the trigger. The officer's head snapped back. Body fell. 2 kills. 4 seconds elapsed. The enemy was reacting now, shouting orders, pointing toward Jack's position based on muzzle flash. Jack fired 5 more times in rapid succession. The semi-automatic action of the M1 Garand allowed this. No bolt to work between shots. Just squeeze, recoil, squeeze. 3 hits. 2 soldiers down. 2 misses as targets dove for cover. Clip empty. The distinctive ping as it auto-ejected. This was the moment that mattered. Standard reload 4 seconds. 4 seconds of vulnerability. 4 seconds when enemy soldiers could advance 20 yards, could close the distance, could overrun the position. Jack's left hand moved, already holding the fresh on-block clip because it was pre-staged on the rifle stock. The modification he'd built at midnight. The modification that risked court-martial. Insert. Seat. 1.5 seconds. Jack was firing again before the Japanese soldiers expected it. They had begun their advance during what should have been his reload window. Now found themselves caught in the open. 3 more shots. 2 more hits. The remaining soldiers retreated into the jungle. 7 confirmed kills. 4 minutes of combat. Jack's hands were steady. Rifle barrel warming but not hot yet. Breathing controlled. Heart rate elevated but manageable. This was familiar. Not the same as hunting turkeys in Screven County, but the principles translated. Move after shooting. Don't let them fix your position. Trust instinct over deliberation. At 5:57 a.m., the second wave attacked differently. Japanese grenades came first. Type 97 fragmentation models with 4.5-second fuses. Jack heard them hit the ground around the fallen tree. Counted 4 impacts in rapid succession. He dropped flat, pressed himself against the earth behind the log. 4 explosions. Dirt and wood splinters kicked up. Shrapnel whined overhead. None landed close enough to cause injury, but they achieved their purpose. Forced Jack to keep his head down. Suppressed him. While Jack was pinned, the Japanese soldiers advanced. He could hear them moving through the undergrowths. Boots on leaves, equipment rattling, getting closer. Jack rose up quickly. 3 soldiers were 30 yards out, moving fast through sparse cover. He fired. First soldier down at 30 yards. Worked the action. Second soldier down at 28 yards. Third soldier dove behind a termite mound. Grenade came sailing over the mound. Jack tracked it. Watched it arc. Impact point 12 feet to his right. He rolled left. The grenade detonated. Concussion wave slammed into the log. Dirt showered down. Jack's ears rang, but he was untouched. The Japanese soldier who'd thrown the grenade emerged from behind the termite mound. 25 yards, rifle raised, searching for Jack. Jack fired from his prone position. The soldier fell. 9 confirmed kills. 8 minutes elapsed. The pattern was establishing itself. Japanese would probe with different tactics. Jack would adapt. Kill the leaders. Kill the aggressive ones. Force the others back. But each wave got smarter. Each wave adapted faster. Jack couldn't stay in one position. Basic infantry doctrine, static positions die. The Japanese mortar teams would find their range. Walk fire onto him. He needed to move. At 6:01 a.m., the knee mortar started. Type 89 grenade dischargers. Effective range 175 yards. The Japanese crews had moved into positions that allowed them to fire over the tree line into the American perimeter. First shell landed 30 yards from Jack. Second shell landed 25 yards. They were walking fire. Standard mortar technique. Adjust range based on observed impacts. Walk the shells onto target. Jack didn't wait for the third shell. Grabbed his ammunition bandolier. Sprinted 20 yards east. Dove behind a cluster of rocks. The third shell hit where he'd been positioned 3 seconds earlier. Crater 6 feet wide. Shrapnel tore through the air where Jack's body had been. He lay behind the rocks, breathing hard. That was closer than the grenade. The modified reload had saved his life twice now. Cut his reload time by 2.5 seconds. Those 2.5 seconds had let him kill 2 more soldiers and relocate before the mortar found him. If he'd been using standard reload procedures, he'd be dead, blown apart by that third shell. Jimmy's face flashed in his memory, the heat of his blood pulsing against Jack's palms. the life draining away between his fingers. Margaret. You'll tell her I... Jack pushed the memory down, focused forward. 8 Japanese soldiers were advancing through the smoke from the mortar impacts. 60 yards out, spread formation. 10-yard intervals between each man. Proper infantry assault doctrine. Hard to engage multiple targets when they maintain spacing. Jack aimed at the lead soldier, controlled his breathing despite the sprint and the adrenaline. His father's voice again. Don't rush the shot. Let your heart settle for 2 seconds. The deer will still be there. Jack fired. Lead soldier fell at 60 yards. Worked the action. Second soldier, 55 yards. Fired. Hit. The remaining 6 soldiers went to ground. Began returning fire. Bullets snapped overhead, impacted the rocks. The distinctive crack of Arisaka rifles. 7.7 millimeter rounds that could punch through cover if it wasn't thick enough. The rocks were volcanic. Dense. Solid cover. Jack worked through the assault line methodically. Shot. Shift aim. Shot. Shift aim. The modified reload let him maintain constant pressure. The enemy expected pauses, expected reload windows, got continuous fire instead. 5 of the 8 Japanese soldiers fell before they could retreat. The remaining 3 withdrew into the jungle. 14 confirmed kills. 12 minutes elapsed. Jack checked his ammunition. 3 clips expended. 4 clips remaining. 32 rounds. He'd killed 17 enemy soldiers with 24 rounds. 70% hit rate under combat conditions. But 32 rounds wouldn't be enough. He could see more soldiers massing in the tree line, 60 yards out, preparing for another push. Jack looked back toward the American positions, saw the supply dump 40 yards behind him, ammunition crates stacked behind cover. If he could reach those crates, could resupply, he'd have the ammunition to hold this position. But the space between his current position and the supply dump was open ground, 40 yards with no cover. The Japanese soldiers in the tree line would see him, would fire. 40 yards of exposure while carrying additional weight. Standard infantry doctrine said, don't do it. Stay in cover, conserve ammunition, call for resupply. But there was no time for resupply. The next wave was forming. Jack could see the soldiers grouping, preparing. In 2 minutes they'd attack. He needed that ammunition. At 6:05 a.m., Jack sprinted. 40 yards, open ground. Japanese rifles opened fire immediately. Bullets cracked past, impacted the earth around his boots. Jack ran in a weaving pattern. Not straight, unpredictable. The way he ran from wild boars in Georgia when he was 12 and had wounded one poorly. He reached the supply dump, dove behind the crates. Bullets impacted where he'd been half a second earlier. Jack grabbed 2 bandoliers of 30-06 ammunition. Each held 60 rounds in 6-round stripper clips, 120 rounds total, slung them over his shoulders, 8 pounds of additional weight. Now he had to get back to a defensive position. The supply dump offered concealment, but not good fields of fire. Too much equipment stacked around. Limited sight lines. He needed to reach the termite mound, 20 yards north. 5 feet tall, 360-degree observation. Best defensive position on this section of perimeter. Another sprint, 20 yards. The Japanese had marked his position now. Concentrated fire. But they didn't expect him to move immediately after reaching the supply dump. Jack ran, bullets chased him, missed by feet, then inches. He dove behind the termite mound, impacted hard, breath knocked out of his lungs, but alive. Behind solid cover, 152 rounds available, good defensive position, 60 yards of clear observation of the tree line. This was where he'd make his stand. At 6:09 a.m., the pattern changed. Japanese tactics shifted. No more cautious advances. No more small probing attacks. Speed assault. 3 soldiers burst from the jungle at full sprint, 45 yards out, not using cover, not stopping to observe, just running full speed at Jack's position. This was different. This was desperation or bravery or both. Close the distance before the defender could kill all 3. Jack's modified reload system had been designed for exactly this scenario. Close combat, rapid engagement, no time for standard reload procedures. First runner at 40 yards. Jack fired. Soldier fell. Standard reload would take 4 seconds. Runner would close to 20 yards in that time. Within grenade range. Within effective pistol range. Dangerous. Modified reload 1.5 seconds. Runner only closed to 32 yards. Second runner, Jack fired. Soldier fell at 32 yards. Third runner, 25 yards now. Close enough to see his face. Young, maybe 19. Same age as Mike. Jack fired. Soldier fell. All three down in 6 seconds. Because the modified reload had cut his vulnerable window by 62%, had let him maintain continuous fire. 17 confirmed kills. 16 minutes elapsed. 20 minutes remaining until reinforcements arrived from battalion headquarters. 20 minutes to keep Bobby and Mike alive. To keep the promise. The jungle fell briefly quiet. Jack used the pause to check his rifle. Barrel was hot now. Not glowing, but too hot to touch with bare hands. He'd fired 24 rounds in 16 minutes. Sustained fire. The barrel was holding up, but heat affected accuracy. Metal expanded. Changed the barrel harmonics. Jack's hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear. From adrenaline and fatigue and the physical toll of combat. His left hand had a burn from the rifle barrel where he'd grabbed it wrong during the sprint to the supply dump. His right shoulder ached from the rifle's recoil. 40-plus shots. The M1 Garand kicked hard, but his hands still worked, still gripped the rifle, still could pull the trigger. That was enough. At 6:14 a.m., Jack heard American voices behind him, boots running, equipment rattling. He turned, saw Bobby and Mike leading 6 reinforcements, 8 men total, squad strength, coming to his position. They reached the termite mound, took defensive positions in an arc around it. The squad leader was a corporal Jack didn't know well. Name was Anderson from Kansas, mid-20s. Anderson looked at Jack, saw the blood on his face from the saber wound, saw the pile of spent brass casings around the termite mound, counted them quickly. 24 casings, 24 shots. Jesus, Harlow. How many? Jack didn't take his eyes off the tree line. Don't know exact count, just keeping them off my brothers. Bobby moved close, checked Jack's saber wound. It had stopped bleeding, clotted. You should fall back, get that treated. No, I know. Mike knelt beside Jack, saw the modified rifle, the belt clips attached to the stock, the fresh en-bloc clip pre-staged. What did you do to your Garand? Modified the clip system. Reloads in 1.5 seconds. Anderson heard this, moved closer, examined the modification. Understanding dawned in his eyes. That's why you're still alive. That's why you held this position. That's court-martial, Bobby said quietly. That's how we're staying alive, Jack replied. Anderson studied the modification for another 5 seconds, then looked at Jack. After this is over, you teach every man in this company how to do that. After this is over, they'll shoot me for it. Maybe, but you'll die having saved 190 men. I'll take that trade. The conversation ended as the final wave emerged from the jungle. This wasn't a probe or a tactical assault. This was everything the Japanese had left. 40-plus soldiers, bayonets fixed, officers with swords drawn, a banzai charge, all or nothing. The time was 6:19 a.m., 12 minutes until reinforcements arrived. 12 minutes to hold against 40 soldiers with 8 defenders. The mathematics were better now, 8 rifles instead of 1, but still unfavorable. 5-to-1 odds. In open combat, those odds meant defeat. But they weren't in open combat. They had the termite mound, had good fields of fire, had interlocking positions, and they had Jack's modified reload system. Anderson had seen it, understood it. Everyone watch Harlow's rifle. See how he reloads. Copy it if you can. The Japanese charged. 40 soldiers, 60 yards. Closing fast, Jack fired. The entire squad fired. 8 rifles speaking simultaneously. The wall of lead stopped the first rank. 7 soldiers fell. The rest kept coming. Jack's clip emptied. Left hand grabbed the pre-staged clip. Insert. Seat. 1.5 seconds. Firing again. The other 7 soldiers were still reloading. Standard procedure. 4 seconds. The Japanese closed 12 yards in that window. Jack killed 2 more soldiers while his squad was reloading. The other defenders saw this, saw the tactical advantage. Anderson shouted over the gunfire. Harlow method, copy his reload. The squad didn't have modified rifles, couldn't pre-stage clips on the stock, but they could adapt, could hold a fresh clip in their left hand while firing, could reduce their reload time even without the modification. The Japanese charge hit a wall of continuous fire. Every time they expected a reload pause, expected a vulnerability window, the defenders were already firing again. Soldiers fell, officers fell. The charge began to falter. 50 yards out, then 55 yards, slowing, breaking. At 6:23 a.m., the Banzai charge hit its breaking point. Soldiers falling, officers falling. The charge slowing, but not stopping. Not yet. Jack's rifle clicked empty. He reached for another clip. His hand found nothing. Both bandoliers exhausted, pouches empty. He'd fired every round. Movement to his right, Japanese soldier emerging from smoke. 10 yards out, bayonet fixed, eyes locked on Jack. Running, not retreating, attacking. Jack had no ammunition, no time to search for loose rounds, no time to call for help. The soldier closed to 8 yards, 6 yards, close enough to see his face. Young, maybe 20, expression determined. This was his final charge too. Jack reversed his M1 Garand, held it like a spear, the bayonet his father had taught him never to remove. Keep it on, you never know when you'll need it. 4 yards. Jack planted his back foot, shifted his weight forward, the way his father taught him to thrust a knife into a charging boar. 2 yards. The Japanese soldier lunged, bayonet aimed at Jack's chest. Jack sidestepped left, drove his own bayonet forward, felt the blade punch through uniform, through flesh, through ribs, felt bone-scraping steel, felt the body go heavy on the blade. The soldier's momentum carried him forward onto Jack's rifle. His own bayonet missed by inches, past Jack's right shoulder. The man's face was 6 inches from Jack's, eyes wide, mouth open, trying to breathe. Jack pulled the trigger. Empty click. No round chambered. Just the mechanical sound of an empty rifle. The Japanese soldier's eyes dimmed. Body went slack. Jack stepped back. Let the body slide off the bayonet. The man fell face down. Didn't move. Jack stood there, rifle in his hands. Blood on the blade, hands shaking violently now. That was 28. The last one. The one who'd almost gotten him. Mike grabbed Jack's arm, made him flinch. It's over. They're retreating. Jack looked at the tree line, saw the Japanese forces withdrawing, moving fast, abandoning the assault. The attack had broken. 28 confirmed kills by Jack personally, 12 additional kills by the reinforcements, 40 total enemy casualties in 36 minutes of combat. Jack slumped against the termite mound, rifle still gripped in his hands, barrel too hot to touch. His modified clip system had worked, had kept him alive long enough for reinforcements to arrive, had let him keep the promise. Bobby sat beside him. You kept your promise. We're alive. Mike joined them. Both of us, going home. Jack looked at them. 2 men he'd promised to protect. Both alive, both uninjured. The promise kept. But the cost of keeping it was written in brass casings scattered around the termite mound, written in Japanese bodies visible through the smoke, written in the modified rifle that would either save doctrine or end Jack's military career. Anderson approached. Private Harlow, you need to come with me, now. Jack stood slowly, legs unsteady, the adrenaline fully crashed now. He could barely stand. Where company commander wants to see you, wants to see that rifle, wants to know what the hell you did to hold this position alone for 19 minutes. Bobby stepped forward. He saved our lives, saved this entire section. I know. That's why the commander wants to see him. Could be a commendation, could be a court-martial. Probably both. Jack looked at his modified rifle, the belt clips he'd attached at midnight, the innovation that had saved his life and kept his promise, the modification that violated Article 108 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Maximum penalty, 5 years hard labor. In a combat zone, possible firing squad. Mike grabbed the rifle. I'll carry it. If they're going to court-martial someone, they can start with me. I watched him build this. Didn't report it. They can court-martial all three of us, Bobby said. We all knew. We all benefited. Anderson shook his head. They're not court-martialing anyone today. We just held this position against 100 soldiers. Battalion is intact. That's worth something. He started walking toward the company headquarters. Jack followed. Legs steadier now, Bobby and Mike walked beside him. Brothers in everything but blood. The sun was fully up now. 7:00 a.m. The jungle revealed in harsh morning light. Jack could see the battlefield clearly for the first time. See what 36 minutes of combat had created. Bodies scattered across 60 yards of jungle. Japanese soldiers who died trying to break through. American positions still intact. The defensive line that had held because one Georgian hunter decided that keeping a promise mattered more than following regulations. They reached the company headquarters tent. Captain Morrison stood outside, Major Ellis beside him. Colonel Hayes arriving from battalion. 3 officers, all looking at Jack, all looking at the modified rifle in Mike's hands. Colonel Hayes spoke first. That's the weapon. Yes, sir, Jack said. Show me. Mike handed the rifle to the colonel. Hayes examined the modification. The belt clips, the pre-staged in-block clip, worked the action, tested the reload procedure, insert, seat, timed it on 1.5 seconds, worked it again, standard procedure without the modification. 4 seconds. Hayes looked at Jack, his face unreadable. You built this? Yes, sir. When I saw last night, 10:00 p.m. to 1:00 a.m. Why? Jack met the colonel's eyes. Yesterday morning, Corporal Jimmy Reeves died because I couldn't shoot fast enough. He had a 6-week-old daughter named Margaret. Last night, I promised Private Chen and Private Kowalski they wouldn't die like Jimmy did. I kept that promise. Sir. Silence. The officers looked at each other. Captain Morrison pulled out a file. The after-action report. Read from it. Intelligence estimates 100 Japanese soldiers committed to this assault. Confirmed casualties 40 killed, estimated 20+ wounded. American casualties in your section 0. Battalion casualties elsewhere, 3 killed, 7 wounded. If your section had failed, if the Japanese had broken through, estimated casualties 60 to 80 killed, 40+ wounded. Morrison closed the file. Private Harlow held the critical position alone for 19 minutes, with a modified weapon, built without authorization, in violation of Article 108 UCMJ. Major Ellis stepped forward. Maximum penalty, 5 years hard labor. Combat zone weapon modification can be considered sabotage. Maximum penalty firing squad. The silence stretched. Jack stood at attention, waiting for judgment. Bobby and Mike stood beside him, ready to share whatever punishment came. Colonel Hayes studied the modified rifle for another 30 seconds, then looked at Jack. If I court-martial you, I punish the man who saved 190 lives. If I give you Medal of Honor, I condone destroying government property. If word gets out that a private with salvaged materials outperforms standard equipment doctrine. Hayes paused, the weight of command visible in his face. The impossible choices that came with rank. What the hell am I supposed to do with you, Private? Jack's voice was steady. Sir, yesterday I watched a good man die because equipment was too slow. I made a promise to 2 brothers that they wouldn't die the same way. I kept that promise. I'd do it again. Court-martial me if you need to, but I'd do it again. Sir. The colonel stared at Jack for 15 seconds, then made his decision. Captain Morrison, how many combat effectives in this battalion? 370, sir. By 0800 hours tomorrow morning, I want 370 rifles modified exactly like Private Harlow's. Private Harlow will supervise the work. Anyone who refuses modification answers to me personally. Hayes turned to Jack. You're promoted to sergeant. You'll train every rifleman in this battalion on your reload technique. You have 72 hours. Officially, this modification doesn't exist. Officially, standard doctrine was followed. Officially, nothing unusual happened here today. Unofficially, you just changed how this battalion fights. You just saved this battalion. Hayes handed the rifle back to Jack. But if you ever modify equipment again without asking me first, I'll shoot you myself. My heart can't take this. Dismissed. Jack saluted. The three officers returned it. Bobby and Mike walked with Jack away from the headquarters tent. They made it 50 yards before Jack's legs gave out. He sat down hard, the adrenaline crash complete. The reality of 36 minutes settling in. 28 men dead by his hand. 190 men alive because of it. Bobby sat beside him. You kept your promise. Mike sat on the other side. We're going home, both of us, June 3rd. I'll make my mama's birthday. Jack looked at his hands, still shaking. Still had Jimmy's blood under the fingernails from yesterday. Would have 40 Japanese soldiers' blood in his memory forever. Yeah, Jack said quietly. You'll make it home. The cost of keeping that promise was 40 lives. The value was 190 lives. The mathematics worked, but mathematics didn't account for faces in the dark, didn't account for 19-year-old soldiers who looked like Mike, didn't account for what carrying those 40 deaths would cost over the next 50 years. But Bobby and Mike were alive. The promise was kept. That would have to be enough. By 800 hours on May 12, 1901, 370 M1 Garand rifles in the 123rd Infantry Regiment carried unauthorized modifications. Belt clips attached to stocks. Fresh in block clips pre-staged for instant access. Reload time reduced from 4 seconds to 1.5 seconds across an entire battalion. Jack supervised the work, taught armorers and squad leaders the technique, demonstrated the reload procedure 50 times. Worked for 22 hours straight. His hands bled from repetitive wire work. His eyes burned from lack of sleep. But by dawn, every combat rifle in the battalion could reload 62% faster than standard doctrine allowed. Within 24 hours, word spread to 3rd Infantry Division headquarters. Within 48 hours, battalion commanders were requesting technical specifications. Within 1 week, 47 modified rifles existed throughout the 33rd Infantry Division. The Japanese noticed. A captured intelligence report, dated May 18, 1945, translated by Army linguists, stated, Americans have developed new rapid-fire reload system. Effectiveness significantly increased. Recommend increasing engagement distances to 100 meters minimum to neutralize tactical advantage. The enemy thought it was official, thought it was engineered, thought millions of dollars had been spent developing this advantage. Reality: 3 hours of midnight work. Salvaged materials. Zero cost. One Georgian hunter who decided keeping promises mattered more than regulations. By August 1945, the war ended. Jack had survived 6 more engagements. The modified reload system had become standard practice in his battalion. Casualty rates dropped. Enemy engagement distances increased. The tactical landscape changed because one soldier broke the rules. On August 15th, VEJ Day, Jack sat with Bobby and Mike outside their tent. The war was over. Orders would come soon. Rotation home. Return to the lives they'd left behind. Bobby spoke first. My father's restaurant opens March 1947. Golden Dragon in Sacramento. You're invited. Lifetime free meals. Jack nodded but said nothing. Mike pulled out his calendar. June 3rd circled in red. Made it, Mama's birthday. She cried for 10 minutes when I called. Said I have a guardian angel. He looked at Jack. Told her his name is Jack Harlow. I'll visit, Jack said. I promise. It was a lie. They all knew it. Some promises could be kept. Some couldn't. They shipped out in September. Different departure dates, different ports. Bobby went west to California. Mike went north to Michigan. Jack went south to Georgia. They shook hands at the airfield, promised to stay in touch, write letters, visit. None of them believed it. War created bonds that peacetime couldn't sustain. They'd been brothers in combat, would be strangers in civilian life. That's how it worked. Jack carried his modified M1 Garand onto the transport plane, the rifle that had killed 40 men, that had kept a promise, that had changed battalion doctrine. Serial number 3256894. He'd memorized it, would remember it forever. On January 23, 1946, Jack stood in the White House, dress uniform, medals on his chest. President Harry Truman holding the Medal of Honor. The citation read, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Private First Class Jack Harlow on May 11, 1945, single-handedly engaged and neutralized a superior enemy force, killing 40 enemy soldiers and preventing a breakthrough that would have resulted in catastrophic American casualties. His actions saved an estimated 190 American lives. Truman pinned the medal on Jack's uniform, shook his hand, asked the question everyone asked. "What will you do now, Sergeant Harlow?" Jack looked at the president, saw the expectation, the hope. America needed heroes, needed men to inspire the next generation, needed symbols. "Go home, sir. Try to forget." Truman's expression shifted. "America won't forget you, son." Jack thought America should forget what I did to those 40 men. But he said nothing, just saluted, left the White House, walked out into Washington winter. The Army Public Relations Office found him 3 days later. Captain Reynolds, young, enthusiastic, full of plans. "Sergeant Harlow, we need you for a recruitment tour. 30 cities over 6 months. You'll inspire thousands. Show young Americans what one man can do, what courage looks like." "No, thank you, sir. This isn't a request, Sergeant. This is an assignment." Jack looked at him. "Court-martial me then. I'm done following orders that don't make sense." They tried. For 2 weeks the Army pressured him, assigned him to Public Relations Battalion, forced him to give 3 speeches. Fort Benning, Atlanta, Savannah. Jack read from prepared scripts, made no eye contact, stood rigid at the podium. Audiences sensed his discomfort. The speeches failed. After the 3rd speech, Jack went AWOL, disappeared. Returned to Screven County, lived in the woods. When military police arrived to arrest him for desertion, the local sheriff intervened. Man named Cooper had known Jack's father. "He's not here, don't know where he went." The sheriff lied, protected him, gave Jack time to negotiate. The negotiation was simple. Army wanted their hero. Jack wanted to disappear. They reached compromise. Honorable discharge. No recruitment tour. But Jack would be marked in his records as uncooperative. His file would note, "Refusal to participate in authorized public relations activities." That notation had consequences. Veterans Administration benefit processing slowed. Not denied, just delayed. Stuck in bureaucratic limbo. Forms requiring additional signatures. Applications needing extra verification. The system's passive-aggressive revenge. Jack was too proud to fight it. Didn't need the money anyway. He'd survived the Depression, hunting and fishing. Could do it again. He disappeared into Screven County, bought a small cabin 6 miles into the woods. No electricity, no telephone, hand pump well. Lived exactly as he had before the war. Hunting deer and turkey, fishing the Savannah River, avoiding people. Bobby sent letters, one every year. Always the same address. Golden Dragon Restaurant, Sacramento, California. Always the same message. Restaurant is doing well. You're always welcome. Please visit. All letters returned. Addressee unknown. Mike sent letters too. From Detroit, then from a suburb, then from a different suburb as his family grew. 4 children, then 6, then 9 grandchildren. Each letter invited Jack to visit, to meet the family, to see what his promise had created. All letters returned, addressee unknown. By 1960, Bobby and Mike assumed Jack was dead. They'd tried for 15 years. No response, no contact, no indication he'd received any letter. Men didn't disappear like that unless they were dead or wanted to be. The years passed. Korean War came and went. New generations of soldiers. New heroes. World War II veterans faded from public memory. The greatest generation became history instead of news. Jack was 45 years old in 1970, still hunting, still fishing, still alone. He'd see other hunters occasionally. They'd nod, exchange brief words about weather or game. Nothing more. Jack's reputation in Screven County was simple: good hunter, keeps to himself, don't bother him. In 1968, a young veteran found Jack in the woods. Kid was 20 years old, out hunting to clear his head. Recognized Jack from a photograph in the Fort Benning Infantry Museum. "Sir, are you Jack Harlow?" Jack didn't answer, kept field dressing the deer he'd shot. "Sir, they taught us the Harlow method in basic training. Reload and move doctrine. You saved hundreds of lives. You're a legend." Jack looked at him, saw the eagerness, the respect. The kid thought he was talking to a hero. "Son, I killed 40 boys who were following orders just like me. Go home. Forget you saw me." The kid left confused, told his sergeant about the encounter. Sergeant told him some men come home but never leave the war, told him to respect that, let it be. The decades accumulated. 1970s became 1980s. Jack turned 60, still hunting, still alone, hair white now, beard long, body lean from hard living, hands scarred from decades of knife work and wood cutting, but still capable, still able to track deer through pine forests, still able to take turkeys at 40 yards. In '94, a military historian at Fort Benning found something interesting. Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to Bobby, though the coincidence would matter later. She was researching battlefield innovations, unofficial modifications that changed tactics, found a classified document from May 1945, technical specifications for rapid reload modification, attributed to Sergeant J. Harlow, 123rd Infantry Regiment. The document included drawings, measurements, materials lists, a complete technical manual for the modification that had saved 190 lives. Dr. Chen traced the name, found Jack's service record, found the Medal of Honor citation, found the notation uncooperative, refused public relations duties, found his last known address, Screven County, Georgia, found no death certificate, which meant either records were incomplete or Jack Harlow was still alive, would be 74 years old. Dr. Chan made calls. Veterans Administration had no contact information. Army records showed honorable discharge, no updates since 1946. She called the Screven County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Williams answered, grandson of Sheriff Cooper, who'd protected Jack in 1946. Jack Harlow? Yeah, he's alive, lives out past Miller's Creek. Don't bother him, though. He doesn't like visitors. I'm not trying to bother him. I'm trying to organize a reunion. 50th anniversary of the Luzon campaign, 1995. His unit wants to honor him. Silence on the line. Then I'll ask, but don't expect much. Jack's been alone a long time. The sheriff drove out to Jack's cabin, found him splitting firewood. 74 years old, still capable of swinging an axe. Jack, there's a historian asking about you. Says your old unit wants a reunion. 50th anniversary. Jack didn't stop splitting wood. Not interested. Your squad mates are looking for you, Bobby Chen, Mike Kowalski. They thought you were dead. The axe paused mid-swing. They're alive. Yeah, both of them. They want to see you. Jack set the axe down, sat on the woodpile. First time in 49 years someone had said those names to him. Bobby, Mike, the men he'd promised, the men who'd lived. Tell them I'm dead. It's easier. Can't do that, Jack. They already know you might be alive. Historian found your records. They're coming whether you want them to or not. In March 1995, Bobby and Mike flew to Georgia. Bobby was 69, owned 3 Golden Dragon restaurants now. Successful, respected in Sacramento's Chinese-American community. Mike was 68, retired factory foreman, 4 children, 9 grandchildren. Both men had lived full lives because of a promise kept 50 years earlier. They hiked 6 miles into the woods with Sheriff Williams as guide, found the cabin, saw smoke from the chimney, knocked on the door. Jack opened it. 74 years old, white beard, weathered face, eyes that had seen too much. Bobby, Mike. Yeah, Jack, it's us. Silence. 3 men looking at each other across 50 years, across lives lived separately, across a promise that had never been forgotten. How did you find me? Historian at Fort Benning. Found records of your modification, started tracing, thought you were dead for 49 years. Jack stepped back, let them in. The cabin was sparse. Bed, table, wood stove, hunting rifle on the wall, not the M1 Garand. That was long gone. Different rifle. But the principle was the same. They sat. Bobby spoke first. My father died in 1987. Last thing he said was, find the Harlow who saved my son. I've been looking since then. Mike pulled out photographs. 4 children, 9 grandchildren, all alive because of May 11th, 1945. Because you kept a promise, Viquan. Jack looked at the photographs, saw the faces, The children who existed because their grandfather had survived. The grandchildren who'd never have been born if Jack had failed. I killed 40 men to keep that promise. You saved 190, Bobby said. Those 40 men had families too. Fathers like yours, children like Mike's. I see their faces every night, have for 50 years. Mike leaned forward. Jack, we need you to come to the reunion. May 1995, Dallas, 50th anniversary. The whole unit will be there, 200 veterans. They want to thank you. I don't deserve thanks. Yes, you do. You kept a promise when it would have been easier to retreat, when regulations said not to modify your rifle, when following orders meant watching us die. You chose to keep the promise instead. Jack was quiet for a long time, looking at the photographs, processing 50 years of isolation, 50 years of guilt, 50 years of believing he should have died instead of those 40 Japanese soldiers. Jimmy Reeves, you remember him? Bobby nodded. Died the day before. Patrol. We carried him back. He had a daughter, Margaret, 6 weeks old. I watched him die. Couldn't save him. That's why I modified the rifle. That's why I made the promise to you two. Couldn't save Jimmy, but I could save you. Jimmy's daughter is 50 years old now, Mike said quietly. She's a nurse, married, 2 children of her own, lives in West Virginia. She'll be at the reunion. She wants to meet you. Jack looked up. She knows about me. We told her everything. Told her about the promise, about the modification, about how you held that position alone. She wants to thank you for trying to save her father and for saving us. The weight of 50 years shifted. Not gone, never gone, but different. Jimmy's daughter had lived a full life, had children of her own. The cycle had continued despite the loss. I'll come, Jack said, to the reunion, but after that I come back here. That's all we're asking. In May 1990, Jack Harlow walked into a hotel ballroom in Dallas, Texas. 200 veterans, average age 72, all members of the 123rd Infantry Regiment, all men who'd survived the war. When Jack entered the room, fell silent. Then someone started clapping. Then everyone. Standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. 200 men honoring one man who'd kept a promise 50 years earlier. Bobby found him in the crowd, introduced Margaret Reeves, 50 years old, nurse, looked like her father. Same eyes. Mr. Harlow, my father died before I knew him. But Bobby and Mike told me everything. Told me you tried to save him. Told me you made sure they survived. Thank you. Jack couldn't speak, just nodded. Margaret hugged him. 50 years of guilt shifted again. Mike brought his family, 4 children, 9 grandchildren, 15 people total, old alive because of May 11th, 1945. Jack, this is my family. Every one of them exists because you kept your promise. My mother met them all before she died. She said, tell Jack Harlow he gave me back my son. Thank you. The program included speeches, battalion history, recognition of those killed in action. Then they called Jack to the podium. He stood there, 200 faces looking at him, expecting words, expecting wisdom. On May 10th, 1945, I watched my friend Jimmy Reeves die. He had a 6-week-old daughter. That night, I promised Bobby Chen and Mike Kowalski they wouldn't die like Jimmy did. I modified my rifle, broke regulations, risked court-martial, didn't care. Keeping promises mattered more than following rules. I kept that promise. Bobby and Mike lived, but 40 Japanese soldiers died. Young men, men with families, men following orders like me. For 50 years, I've been hiding from what I did, but seeing you all here, seeing Margaret, seeing Mike's grandchildren, seeing what that promise created, I finally understand. Those 40 men died so these people could be born. That's the trade, that's the cost, that's the burden we carry. The men who died at Dingalan Bay deserve remembering more than the men who survived. But I'm glad some of us did survive. Thank you for not forgetting me even when I tried to forget myself. The room was silent, then applause. Not celebration, recognition, understanding. Every man in that room carried similar burdens, similar trades, similar costs. After the reunion, Bobby and Mike tried to convince Jack to move closer to civilization, to accept VA benefits, to live somewhere with electricity and running water. Jack refused. "I'll stay where I am. It's where I belong. We'll visit then, every year, whether you want us to or not." "I'd like that." In September 1995, Georgia designated State Route 21 through Screven County as the James T. Harlow Medal of Honor Highway. Jack attended the ceremony. Bobby and Mike flew in. Local high school JROTC served as honor guard. Jack spoke for 3 minutes. "Courage is not the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. Remember the men who didn't come home. They paid the price for our freedom. Honor them." On April 5, 1997, Jack Harlow died peacefully in his sleep, 76 years old, in the cabin 6 miles into Georgia woods. A local hunter found him 2 days later. Notified the sheriff. Sheriff notified Bobby and Mike. The funeral was April 12, 1997. Hillcrest Memorial Park in Screven County. 200 people attended, veterans from across the country. Bobby and Mike served as pallbearers alongside 4 other members of their squad from 1945. Margaret Reeves sang Amazing Grace, her voice carrying across the cemetery. Her father's voice in some way. The daughter of the man who died so others could live. Full military honors. Honor Guard fired 3 volleys. Bugler played taps. The ceremony America gives its heroes. Jack's M1 Garand lay on the casket, not the original. That rifle had been lost to Army inventory decades ago. This was a replica, but it carried the same modification. Belt clips on the stock. On-block clip pre-staged. The innovation that had changed doctrine. After the ceremony, Bobby approached the Honor Guard commander. "What happens to the rifle?" "Fort Benning Infantry Museum requested it. They want it for their World War II innovation exhibit." "Good, Jack would want that, want soldiers to learn from it." The rifle went to Fort Benning, placed in a glass case. Plaque beside it read, "M1, Garand Rifle Modified Pattern, Replica of Modification created by Sergeant Jack Harlow, May 10, 1945, Original Rifle, Serial Number 3256894, Lost to Army Inventory. Harlow Clip. Method reload time reduced from 4 seconds to 1.5 seconds. Used on May 11, 1945, 40. Enemy casualties, 190. American lives saved. Innovation born from promise to fallen friend. Quote, "Better court-martial than broken promise, Sergeant Jack Harlow." Today, every infantry recruit at Fort Benning learns the Harlow reload drill, not with belt clips anymore. Modern rifles use different magazine systems. But the principle remains. Pre-stage your next magazine. Reduce reload time. Maintain fire superiority. Instructors tell the story. May 11, 1945. 1 soldier, modified rifle. 40 kills in 36 minutes. 190 lives saved. Promise kept. They tell recruits that doctrine is a starting point, not a finish line. That individual initiative matters. That sometimes keeping promises requires breaking rules. Room 4 in the Scout Sniper School is named the Harlow Innovation Lab, where soldiers learn to adapt, to modify, to think beyond doctrine when doctrine isn't enough. Bobby Chen died in 2003, 83 years old. Heart attack, quick and painless. His 3 Golden Dragon restaurants continued. His children ran them. On the wall of each restaurant hung a photograph. 4 men, May 1945, Philippines. Jack, Jimmy, Bobby, Mike. Arms around each other, all smiling. Below the photo, a plaque, but in memory of Jack Harlow, who kept his promise. Mike Kowalski died in 2008, 87 years old, surrounded by family, 4 children, 12 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren. His last words were about June 3, 1945, his mother's birthday, the day he'd promised to see her again. Jack kept his promise. I made it home. 19 people at my bedside because one man decided promises matter more than regulations. Thank him for me. In 2015, Dr. Sarah Chen published a book, The Promise Keeper, How One Soldier's Innovation Changed Infantry Doctrine. Detailed history of the Harlow modification. It spread through the Pacific Theater. Its influence on modern reload techniques. The book became required reading at Fort Benning. Margaret Reeves wrote the foreword. I never met my father. He died before I could know him. But I met the man who tried to save him, who promised to save others, who kept that promise at the risk of everything. My father's legacy lives through Jack Harlow's promise, through the 190 men who came home, through their children and grandchildren, through the thousands of soldiers who learned from his innovation. War creates impossible choices. My father died. Jack lived with that guilt for 50 years. But his response to that death saved 190 lives, created hundreds of descendants, changed how armies fight. That's the cost and value of keeping promises. 40 deaths, 190 lives. The mathematics work, but they don't account for the burden. Don't account for 50 years in a cabin in the woods. Don't account for the weight of trading lives. Jack Harlow was a hero, not because he killed 40 men, but because he decided that keeping a promise to two brothers mattered more than his own safety, his own career, his own life. That's what heroes do. They decide some things matter more than regulations. The final page of the book contains one photograph. Jack Harlow at 74, standing in front of his cabin, white beard, weathered face, holding an M1 Garand, not the modified one, just a standard rifle. But in his hands it represented something more. The caption read, Jack Harlow, 99, 50 years after keeping a promise. Still standing, still remembering, still carrying the weight. On May 11th, every year Fort Benning holds a ceremony, Harlow Promise Day. They gather at the museum. Stand before the modified rifle in its glass case. Read the citation. Remember the story. Then an instructor addresses the assembled soldiers, always the same words. On this day in 1945, one soldier decided that keeping a promise mattered more than following regulations. He modified his rifle, broke the rules, risked court-martial, held a position against 100 enemy soldiers, killed 40, saved 190. The Harlow method isn't about reload speed. It's about deciding what matters, about keeping promises when breaking them would be easier, about individual initiative when the system says follow orders. Sergeant Jack Harlow spent 50 years alone, carrying the weight of 40 deaths. But those 40 deaths bought 190 lives, bought hundreds of descendants, bought the lesson we teach you today. Sometimes the right thing requires breaking rules. Sometimes keeping promises costs everything. Sometimes one soldier with a modified rifle and the will to use it changes the outcome of a war. Remember Sergeant Harlow. Remember his promise. Remember that doctrine serves soldiers, not the other way around. And remember that the men who died deserve honor equal to the men who lived. The ceremony ends with 3 volleys, 21 guns, the same honors Jack received at his funeral, the same honors America gives all its heroes. In Scriven County, the Jack Harlow Medal of Honor Highway runs 23 miles through pine forests, past the cabin where he lived, past the woods where he hunted, past the land where his father taught him to shoot turkeys and trust his hands. Travelers pass it every day. Most don't know the story, don't know about May 11th, 1945, don't know about the promise or the modification or the 40 deaths that bought 190 lives. But some do. Veterans make pilgrimages, visit the cabin, stand in the woods. Try to understand how one man held a position against impossible odds. The answer is simple. He made a promise. And Jack Harlow kept his promises, even when it cost him everything, even when it meant 50 years alone, even when 40 faces haunted every night. He kept his promises. That's what heroes do.